Hello everyone, friends, this is the affair that shattered US Part 4, have a nice day and enjoy for watching. The day of the first divorce hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. Mark walked into the courtroom with his usual air of confidence, but I could see cracks in his facade. He looked strained, like a man who was barely holding it together. Rachel, on the other hand, was cool and collected. She presented the evidence we'd gathered, the hidden account, the surveillance footage, and Erica's folder. Each piece painted a picture of a man who had lied, cheated, and manipulated to maintain control. Mark's lawyer tried to spin the narrative, arguing that the hidden account was for business purposes and that Erica was a disgruntled acquaintance trying to smear his character. But the evidence was too damning to ignore. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled in my favor to freeze more of Mark's assets and granted me temporary exclusive use of the house. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Mark wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. A few days after the hearing, I received another anonymous message: "You're making a big mistake. This isn't over." I forwarded the message to Rachel, who advised me to file a police report. "We need to document everything," she said. "If Mark escalates, we'll have a trail of evidence to protect you." The thought of Mark escalating made my stomach churn, but I knew Rachel was right. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. Erica continued to provide more information about Mark's schemes. She even agreed to testify if needed, though she was clearly terrified of the repercussions. "Why are you risking this?" I asked her one day. "Because I owe you," she said simply. "And because someone needs to stop him." Her courage gave me strength. For all her faults, Erica was trying to make amends in the only way she knew how. And in some strange way, that gave me hope. One evening, I received a package at my doorstep. Inside was another USB drive, along with a handwritten note: "You're closer than you think. Keep digging." The files on the drive were even more incriminating than the first. They included recordings of Mark discussing shady deals and making threats to others who had crossed him. It was clear now that Mark wasn't just manipulative, he was corrupt on a level I hadn't fully grasped. Rachel and I worked late into the night, piecing together the new evidence. "Whoever sent this wants to take Mark down as much as we do," she said. "But we need to be careful. If Mark finds out we have this, he'll go nuclear." As we dug deeper, we uncovered something shocking: Mark's hidden account wasn't just for personal use. It was tied to a shell company that had been funneling money to an offshore account. The transactions were suspicious enough to warrant further investigation, and Rachel wasted no time in contacting the authorities. "This could blow everything wide open," she said. "If Mark's involved in illegal activity, it won't just be about the divorce anymore. He could face criminal charges." The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. For the first time, I felt like we had the upper hand. But I also knew that the closer we got to exposing Mark, the more dangerous he could become. As the investigation into Mark's financial dealings gained traction, the tension escalated. Rachel informed me that law enforcement was reviewing the evidence we'd provided, and there was a strong possibility Mark would be subpoenaed. It was a glimmer of hope, but it also made me nervous. Mark was unpredictable, and the walls were closing in on him. One evening, I came home to find a handwritten note slipped under my door: "If you keep this up, you'll regret it. Don't test me." I froze, clutching the note as my pulse raced. This wasn't just a vague threat, it was personal, invasive. Mark was sending a message loud and clear: he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. I immediately called Rachel, who urged me to report the note to the police. "This proves he's feeling the pressure," she said. "But it also shows he's desperate. That makes him dangerous." I filed a report the next morning, but the fear lingered. Every creak in the house, every shadow in the corner, felt like a reminder of Mark's looming presence. As the investigation deepened, I received a surprising call from Thomas Grant, the private investigator Mark had hired. He claimed he had information that could help me, but there was a catch: he wanted immunity. Rachel and I met with him in a neutral location, a small diner on the outskirts of town. Grant, a wiry man with darting eyes, looked nervous as he slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" Rachel asked, flipping through the documents. Proof that Mark's been blackmailing people, Grant said, his voice low. Including me. He has dirt on half the people he's worked with. That's how he keeps everyone in line. The folder contained emails, contracts, and even photographs that painted a damning picture of Mark's network of manipulation. It was more than enough to strengthen our case and potentially dismantle Mark's carefully crafted empire. But Grant's next words chilled me to the core. He's been tracking you too. Cameras, GPS, the works. He's obsessed with control. Armed with the new evidence, Rachel and I prepared for the next court hearing. But before we could present anything, Mark did something I never expected. He called me. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Face to face. Against Rachel's advice, I agreed to meet him in a public place. Curiosity and a lingering need for closure got the better of me. We met at a cafe, and for the first time in months, Mark looked genuinely vulnerable. I screwed up, he said, his hands fidgeting with his coffee cup. I let things get out of control. I was scared of losing everything, and I made some bad choices. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this was the man I'd loved, finally taking responsibility for his actions. But then he leaned closer, his eyes glinting with a familiar intensity. But you have to stop this, he said. You're ruining my life, and you don't want to see what I'm capable of when I have nothing left to lose. The thin veneer of vulnerability shattered, and I saw Mark for what he truly was, a man who would say or do anything to maintain control. Days after our meeting, the police raided Mark's office. The investigation into his financial dealings had unearthed enough evidence to warrant a search, and the fallout was swift. Colleagues distanced themselves, clients dropped him, and whispers of criminal charges grew louder. Mark, however, wasn't going down without a fight. He lawyered up and started spinning a narrative of his own, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife and a malicious smear campaign. But the evidence against him was mounting, and for the first time, it felt like justice might finally be served. The fallout from the police raid on Mark's office was immediate and chaotic. Word spread quickly among his professional network, and suddenly, his once impeccable reputation was in shambles. Mark's confidence began to crack as his allies turned their backs on him, distancing themselves from the growing scandal. Meanwhile, Rachel and I worked tirelessly to ensure every piece of evidence we had was airtight. The new documents from Thomas Grant and the surveillance footage painted a clear picture of Mark's deception, manipulation, and likely illegal activities. Mark's lawyer tried to stall the case, claiming the evidence had been obtained unfairly, but it was too late. The authorities were already building a case for fraud and embezzlement, and it was only a matter of time before Mark would have to answer for his crimes. Erica, despite her fear of retaliation, took the stand during one of the hearings. She detailed her relationship with Mark, admitting to the affair but also shedding light on his controlling behavior and his pattern of manipulation. I thought I was special, she said, her voice trembling. But I wasn't the first, and I wasn't the last. Mark uses people, he twists their emotions to get what he wants. Her testimony was a turning point. It humanized the case, showing the court how Mark's behavior wasn't just unethical but deeply damaging on a personal level. Facing mounting pressure, Mark tried one final tactic, an emotional plea to me. He showed up outside my house late one night, begging me to drop the case. Think about everything we've been through, he said, his voice cracking. You're not just ruining me, you're ruining us. I stared at him, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and disbelief. There is no us, Mark. Not anymore. He shifted gears, his tone turning cold. You'll regret this, he hissed. You're playing a dangerous game. I slammed the door in his face, but his words stayed with me. Mark was desperate, and desperate people were unpredictable. A week later, as the legal battle continued, I received another anonymous package. Inside was a stack of documents, bank statements, emails, and contracts that linked Mark's shell company to illegal offshore accounts. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Among the documents was proof that Mark had been funneling money to someone I'd never heard of before, a man named Victor Steele. After some digging, Rachel discovered that Victor was a known fixer, someone hired to make problems disappear, no matter the cost. The implication was clear: Mark wasn't just protecting his assets, he was preparing for something much darker. With this new information, Rachel contacted the authorities immediately. "This changes everything," she said. "If Mark's been working with someone like Victor Steele, it's not just about financial crimes anymore. This could turn into a criminal conspiracy." The stakes had never been higher. As the investigation deepened, I felt a growing sense of urgency. Mark was running out of options, and the closer we got to the truth, the more dangerous he became. But I refused to back down. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand. Mark's empire of lies was crumbling, and I was determined to see it fall. Thank you very much for watching. Please support me by subscribing, liking and of course commenting. See you next videos.